Okay, the ASUS ROG Strix AMD Advantage Edition laptop, the final verdict. After about 2.5 years, what do I think of all the key features, the ergonomics, and the battery life, and how is it holding up in 2023 versus some of its Intel counterparts and the new Ryzen 7000 series? Now, this laptop did not have a muck switch, meaning that it has to run the graphics through the onboard graphics before you end up seeing. So that gave it a little bit of a hit in graphics scores for some benchmarks in games. But overall, considering the amount of power we're pushing, the battery life seems to have been good, although I'm not 100% sure if this unit was defective because I had to send it to AMD Repair Center 3 times until I could get it functioning as advertised with scores in TimeSpy of 11,000. The battery life seems to hold up decently well in typical gaming tasks, around an hour and a half to 2 hours. I still haven't seen much improvement in the way of general web browsing and just YouTube watching. I still was only able to get about 4 hours on that. With 67% remaining, we're only seeing about an hour and 14 minutes here in the Windows power settings, down to like 50 or 60% max, and we still don't really get very good performance here. But it seems that this unit might not be entirely non-defective, as I've seen online other people getting 6 to 8 hours. So I think perhaps it's just my personal experience, but if I've had to resend this into ASUS 3 times and they still didn't fix the problem, I think this might be a little bit more widespread than just my experience. I understand a lot of people have been getting the full 6 to 8 hour experience with this thing, but 3 units in, or 3 repairs in, I haven't seen that. So final verdict, ASUS has terrible quality control, but for the laptop itself, it performs a lot better than many of the laptops in its power class if you're just going to be using it plugged in and plugged into a monitor, especially over USB-C. However, I did run into some issues plugging in over USB-C. Now, tell me in the comments if you're having the same issue. Each time I plug in this laptop over USB-C and I use a creative application like Premiere Pro, or even game on it to some extent, after shutting down the game, or if I leave Premiere Pro or any creative application open while it's plugged in to a screen via USB-C and the laptop goes into sleep mode, it sometimes stays stuck in sleep mode, or it has a power failure. Not necessarily a power failure, but it shows in the power events like a kernel 63 event or something weird happening where it just crashes the computer and then it has to turn on and reload all the applications. And it seems many people have had this issue as well. ASUS has put out many BIOS updates to try and remedy this, and they even put out another BIOS update after I sent them like 30 emails reporting the problem to them, but it seems to be unresolved. So I think it's actually just a hardware issue with all of the laptops. So beware. I mean, if you're going to just use it over HDMI out, I think it's going to be fine for the most part. Or if you're just going to use the laptop screen, that bug won't likely repeat itself. But just something to beware of, especially since you are getting direct connection to the discrete graphics over the USB-C, and you're not getting that over the HDMI. So the performance seems to be a little bit better graphically, but by about 10% if you use the USB-C out on the laptop. Some of my favorite things about the laptop is it did have nice fully sized battery, about 90 watt hours. Would have been nice for it to fill just a little bit further and get that full 100 watt hour battery in. The speakers on the laptop were very good and comparable or better than many of the other laptops in its class. The 1080p screen also really good, really sharp, fast, 300 hertz, decent response times. But I did find the color accuracy to be lacking, especially when it's unplugged, oddly enough. But lately the color's actually been pretty good, and perhaps the software update corrected things. We used to be able to adjust color to Rec 709 in the advanced display settings, and it actually switches to the 60 hertz automatically when it's unplugged to save battery, which is a great feature. One of my favorite laptops to compare the ROG Strix AMD Advantage Edition to has been the Lenovo Legion. And I recently picked up the 2023 7i version of the Lenovo Legion and have been liking it. The battery life is actually pretty comparable to this, even though it has a 100 watt hour battery inside, but I much prefer the keyboard on this one, as you don't have the translucent side keys and you don't have the translucent WASD keys. So it is per key RGB lit, so you can just go in and color customize your keyboard to bring out those WASD keys if you want. Overall feel of the laptop is a lot better. And I can go in here, since this laptop has a mux switch, I can go in here and turn on the hybrid iGPU only mode to save battery. We even have this option to do an overnight battery charging mode, so it only charges the battery from 80 to 100% at the very end of the night to have the laptop spend a little bit less time fully charged, and as we know, that will prolong the life of many lithium-ion type batteries. So here we can adjust the thermal mode, hop into custom mode here. I was actually able to modify the wattages here, but for some reason now I'm not able to get into that, and it might just be because the laptop isn't plugged in, similar to this guy over here. However, quiet mode seems to achieve decent battery run times. In iGPU only mode, at about 74%, so a similar percentage of battery remaining, the Lenovo Legion 7i seems to be reading out a much higher battery runtime here with YouTube playback. Now comparing the graphics on the 6800M in the RTX 4070 variant, we're getting time SPI scores around the 12,000 mark, and on the 6800M we were getting around the 11,000 mark. My conclusion in the build quality department is that the Lenovos have always felt a little bit more solid with less give, less bendiness, a little less creaking in the lid, a little bit less flexible of a lid, just by a small margin, although the Lenovo 7i is a partly metal chassis, and on here just the top of the lid is metal. Now would I say it's worth upgrading at this point if you're sitting with a 2021, 2020 generation laptop and upgrading to a 2023 model? I would say if you can get a good sale price, then definitely I would go for it. Now going over the build quality, again with the Lenovo, the keyboard feels really great, really tight. The chassis is really tight. There's not much flex in the lid and in the bottom itself. The speakers are much better, much more upgraded over the 2020 series Legion laptops. The woofers are much larger, as you can see when I opened the chassis. And the screen is a 16 by 10 1440p panel, which appears to have much better color accuracy than on the AMD edition laptop. It's a 240 hertz panel, which is plenty. The 300 hertz panel really is overkill. Even if it was just a 120 hertz panel with really good color accuracy, I would still give it a pass. The brightness also goes higher, up to 500 nits, so this can be very useful if editing photos in a bright cafe. And then my commentary on the looks of the Lenovo laptops is they look more professional, especially with the keyboard deck and the font selection for the keys. Everything just looks a lot more professional grade and muted. The chiclet style keys look clean. There's full arrow keys rather than compressed ones. And the per key lighting allows full customization, as well as the little tiny more subdued light strip at the bottom here that's straight and actually barely visible. The AMD Advantage Edition laptop has a lot of different edges and is a very busy design compared to the very square and rounded corners of the Lenovo. Now I'm going to enjoy the very powerful Lenovo Legion 7i with the Core i9 and the GeForce RTX 4070, which seems to be giving me some really decent battery life, regardless of the fact that these are really high wattage chips. Thanks for watching Epic Tech with Nathaniel, and have a great day.